Once upon a time, in a country where the rich lived like kings and the poor worked like shadows, there was a young woman named Ngozi. She was a quiet girl, humble, soft-spoken, always keeping her head down. She had the kind of face you'd walk past without remembering, but behind those eyes lived 1,000 unspoken stories. She worked as a maid in one of the most powerful billionaire families in Nigeria. On this particular Saturday, her feet moved like they were on fire. The mansion was glowing. Every corner of the massive hall sparkled with gold and crystal lights. Flowers hung like waterfalls. Music danced from the speakers, and laughter echoed as guests poured into the grand wedding venue. The wedding of Chief Chukwudi Ikenna Okoro, the billionaire himself, was happening today. And not just any wedding, this was the kind of event that shut down roads. Helicopters flew overhead, media vans parked outside. The whole country was talking about it. Chukwudi's bride, Adana, was known for her beauty and class. She had studied abroad, owned a fashion line, and her face was on magazine covers. People called her the Queen of Lagos. Today, she wore a white wedding dress so long and wide, it needed 2 girls to carry the tale. Her makeup was flawless. Her smile looked perfect. But her eyes were sharp, always scanning. Ngozi stood by the drink table in her black and white maid uniform, trying to stay invisible. Her stomach poked out beneath her apron, the pregnancy now impossible to hide. At 5 months, she could barely carry trays without gasping for air, but she had begged her boss, the wedding planner, not to remove her from the team. She needed the money, and somewhere in her heart, she needed to see this day. Her eyes moved toward the stage, where Chukwudi stood in a custom white suit with gold embroidery. He looked like a king. People clapped as he gave a small speech about love and loyalty. Adana stood beside him, holding his hand like she owned the world. Ngozi's lips pressed into a tight line. Her chest rose and fell quickly, but she said nothing, just watched. Then it happened. Their eyes met. From across the room, Chukwudi's gaze fell on her. Just for a second. Just a flicker. But it was enough. He looked away immediately, pretending she wasn't even there. Ngozi's hands trembled as she held the tray of wine. One of the glasses tilted slightly, and she quickly straightened it. Her throat burned, but she swallowed the feeling down. "You're standing too long, Ngozi," whispered one of the other maids beside her. "Sit for a while. That baby needs rest." "I'm fine," Ngozi said quickly, forcing a smile. "I just need to finish serving this round." "Are you sure? You don't look." "I'm fine." She walked away before the conversation could go further. Across the hall, Adana's smile twitched. She had noticed the glance too. She turned toward Chukwudi, whispering into his ear, "Who is that girl over there by the drinks?" "Which one?" Chukwudi asked, eyes scanning the crowd. "The pregnant one. The slim one in the back. Why is she looking at you like that?" Chukwudi chuckled, brushing it off. "She's just a maid. Maybe she's nervous." Adana's eyes narrowed. "She's been staring at you since we walked in." "You're imagining things," he said quickly. "Let's focus on the event, my love." But Adana kept looking at Ngozi, and the more she looked, the more uneasy she became. Ngozi didn't notice. She had slipped into the hallway to breathe. Her hands were shaking now. The truth of everything was sitting on her chest like a block. She had thought she could handle seeing them together. She had thought she would be strong. But as the music played and guests clapped for the perfect couple, all she felt was a heavy silence inside. 5 months ago, things had been different. So different. She had been alone, scared, and pregnant. Chukwudi had promised he would be there. That he would take care of her. That he loved her. Then, one day, he simply disappeared. No more calls. No more visits. No more promises. Just silence. And today, he was marrying someone else. Ngozi wiped her face quickly and stepped back into the hall. She couldn't cry here. Not here. Not today. She walked back to the drinks table and picked up the next tray. Her legs felt like sticks, her back ached, but she moved anyway. "Please serve the front row guests," the head coordinator said. The bride wants every VIP to have a fresh drink before the couple's toast. Ngozi nodded. She walked slowly, carefully, toward the front. The air near the stage felt hotter. She could feel the stares on her belly. She kept her head low, but her eyes couldn't help flickering toward Chukwudi again. And that's when it happened. Adana was laughing with a group of high society women when Ngozi approached. She bent slightly to offer a drink, but her tired fingers slipped. A small splash of red wine hit the edge of Adana's wedding gown. Time froze. Everyone around them turned. Adana looked down at her dress, then slowly raised her head. "What did you just do?" she said coldly. Ngozi's lips trembled. I'm so sorry, madam. It was an accident." Adana stood. "Do you know how much this dress costs?" Ngozi bent quickly, trying to wipe the tiny spot. "Please forgive me, madam. I didn't mean to." But before she could finish the sentence, the slap landed. A loud, clear, heavy smack across her cheek. Ngozi stumbled sideways, the tray falling from her hands, glass crashing on the ground. The hall went completely silent. Not a single person moved. Adana stood tall, her chest heaving. "This is my wedding day. Do you hear me? My wedding day. And you pregnant thing. How dare you bring your clumsiness here?" Ngozi's hand touched her cheek slowly. Her eyes widened, not from the pain, but from something deeper. And then, she lifted her face. Her voice was low, but it carried across the entire hall. "This child I'm carrying," she said. "It belongs to your husband." Gasps filled the air. Guests looked at each other. Some people covered their mouths. Some raised their phones to record. Chukwudi froze. Adana turned sharply. "What did you just say?" Ngozi's eyes didn't leave Chukwudi. "I said this baby inside me is his. He left me when I told him I was pregnant. And now he's marrying you, like I don't exist." Chukwudi tried to speak, but his lips wouldn't move. Adana's face twisted in disbelief. "That's a lie. Tell her she's lying." Chukwudi opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Ngozi placed a hand on her stomach. Her tears had stopped. Her shame had disappeared. There was only truth now. And silence. The hall remained frozen. The wedding of the century had just turned into a scandal no one would forget. For a moment, it felt like the whole world stopped breathing. Ngozi stood there, her chest rising and falling, one hand still on her red, swollen cheek. The other hand gently rested on her pregnant belly as her words echoed again in the minds of everyone in that wedding hall. "This baby I'm carrying belongs to your husband." The silence that followed was louder than any music. Adana's jaw dropped open. Her hand, the same one that had slapped Ngozi, now trembled by her side. Her white gown shimmered under the lights, but she didn't feel like a bride anymore. She felt like a fool standing in front of strangers, holding the hand of a man who suddenly looked like someone she didn't know. She turned slowly to face Chukwudi. "Say something," she said through clenched teeth. "Tell them she's lying." But Chukwudi didn't speak. His lips moved a little, but no words came out. Sweat formed around his temples. His eyes were stuck on Ngozi like a man trapped in a dream he never thought would catch up with him. People in the crowd began to murmur. "Is this true? Wait, she's really pregnant for him. God, did you see the way she said it?" One woman whispered to her husband, "I told you something was off about that girl. She's been crying since morning." Another guest shook her head. "This is not a wedding. This is a movie." Adana stepped closer to Chukwudi, her voice now louder. "Answer me, Chukwudi. Did you touch this girl?" Still, nothing. She shouted this time. "Is it true?" He swallowed hard. His voice finally came out, but it was weak. "Adana, let's go inside and talk." "No," she snapped. "We're going to talk right here, in front of everyone. Since you let this happen in front of the whole world, let's finish it here." Ngozi's eyes were wet now. Her hands dropped to her sides, and her voice cracked as she spoke again. "I didn't want to ruin your wedding. I swear. But after the slap, I couldn't hold it anymore. I begged him. I cried. I called him again and again. But he left me like I was nothing. Her voice broke as tears finally rolled down her cheeks. I've been working like a dog, carrying this child, while he acted like I didn't even exist. And today, I stood here watching him smile and kiss you, like he didn't leave me behind. Adana slowly turned to face her again, her voice shaking. When did this start? Ngozi wiped her face. 7 months ago. He said he was lonely, that he needed someone who understood him. I was a fool. I believed everything. You slept with him? Adana asked, her voice tight. Ngozi looked her in the eye and nodded once. Yes. Without protection. Ngozi lowered her eyes. He said he loved me. Adana laughed bitterly. It wasn't the laugh of a happy bride. It was the kind of laugh someone makes when their whole world cracks. People around them were pulling out phones. Some tried to hide their cameras, but most weren't even pretending. The wedding was no longer a celebration. It had become a scandal, and everyone wanted a front row seat. Chukwudi raised his hand weakly. Can everyone just, please, give us some privacy? But no one moved. Adana folded her arms. Privacy? You want privacy now? She turned to the guests. Everybody listen. I gave this man my heart. I trusted him. I thought I was marrying a man with dignity. But he's been sleeping with the maid behind my back. A pregnant maid. Chukwudi stepped forward, desperate now. Adana, please. Let's not do this here. Please. She pointed at Ngozi. You slapped her with your lies, and now she's standing here carrying your shame. Ngozi sniffed and whispered, I'm not looking for trouble. I just wanted him to take responsibility. I didn't want to ruin your day. You've already done it, Adana said coldly. But don't worry, you didn't ruin it alone. He helped you. Someone clapped at the back. One old woman said loudly, you both deserve each other. A maid and a liar. Another shouted, what kind of billionaire behaves like this? No shame at all. Chukwudi turned to the guests. Please, enough. This is a private matter. But the guests had turned. The ones who had come for pictures and champagne now wanted gossip and drama. Ngozi tried to walk away, but her legs shook. Her head felt light, and her back began to hurt badly. The baby kicked hard inside her, and she placed a hand over her stomach. Adana noticed and frowned. Are you okay? Ngozi opened her mouth to speak, but she stumbled and almost fell. Some of the other maids rushed forward. Please, sit down, one said. You need air. No, Ngozi said weakly. I'm fine. You're not, another said. You're shaking. Adana watched, torn between anger and confusion. Part of her still wanted to scream, to slap her again. But another part of her, the part that had once felt like a woman, not just a bride, looked at Ngozi and felt something else. Pity. Chukwudi took a step forward. Let me help her. No. Ngozi snapped, loud and sharp. Don't come near me. He froze. I don't need your help. You had your chance. You made your choice. Her voice cracked again. I stood by you when you had no one. I believed in you. And now you treat me like dirt. The whole room was quiet again. Even the music had stopped playing long ago. Adana turned and slowly walked toward the exit of the hall. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor. But then she stopped halfway, turned around, and stared straight at Ngozi. What are you going to do now? She asked. Ngozi's voice was soft, but steady. I'll raise my child. With or without him. And what if he tries to take the child later? Ngozi's hand tightened on her belly. He gave up that right the day he left me. Adana nodded slowly. She looked back at Chukwudi one last time. Her voice was cold. You are a disgrace. He looked like a man falling apart. I didn't plan for this to happen. You never do, she cut in. Men like you never plan to hurt people. But you do it anyway. And with that, she walked out of the hall. Some guests followed. Others stayed behind, still stunned. Ngozi sat down slowly as one of the maids brought her water. She felt weak, but lighter, like a weight had just been taken off her shoulders. For the first time in months, she had spoken the truth. And now, the world knew. Chukwudi stood in the middle of it all, dressed like a king, but looking like a broken man. Everything he had built, his image, his perfect wedding, his spotless reputation, had crashed in seconds. He turned to Ngozi, eyes red, voice shaking. "Why did you do this today?" She looked at him. "You slapped me first. Not with your hand, but with your silence." And she turned her face away. He didn't speak again. He just stood there, watching the crowd slowly leave. The wedding of the century was over, and not a single person clapped. Chukwudi stood frozen in the middle of the wedding hall like a statue. His hands hung by his side. His face looked pale. His expensive agbada, the pure white outfit with golden embroidery, no longer looked royal. It now felt heavy, like a prison. He could feel the eyes, hundreds of them, watching him, judging him. The guests didn't even try to hide it anymore. Some were whispering. Some were shaking their heads. Some were already heading for the exit. What was once a hall filled with joy, laughter, and music had now turned into a courtroom. One where he was the only person on trial. Ngozi sat quietly on a chair by the side of the stage. One maid stood behind her, fanning her gently. Another held a cold bottle of water to her lips. She looked tired, drained, and embarrassed. But she didn't cry again. Not now. Her voice had already spoken. Her truth was already in the open. A woman in a red lace dress near the front stood up and pointed at Chukwudi. "So this is the man that called himself a responsible billionaire. You were sleeping with your maid all along, and now she's pregnant? Shame! Disgraceful!" shouted a man in a blue kaftan beside her. "You brought us here to celebrate your marriage, and this is what we get. Is this what you call love?" Another woman added, holding her handbag. "You had the whole country watching. TV crews, cameras, even governors. And this is the secret you've been hiding." More people joined in. The voices got louder, the judgment heavier. Chukwudi opened his mouth to speak, but before he could say anything, a loud voice from the back of the hall cut through. "Leave him. Let him stand there and feel it." Everyone turned. It was Adana's elder sister, Kayoma, tall, proud, with arms folded across her chest. She walked slowly toward the stage, her heels clicking hard against the tiled floor. Her face was firm, her voice sharp. "You looked me in the eye last week, Chukwudi," she said, stopping just a few feet from him. "You told me you loved my sister. You said you'd protect her, that you were ready to start a new life." "I meant it," Chukwudi began. She raised her hand to stop him. Don't lie again. Not here. Not now." He swallowed hard. Kayoma turned to the guests. "This wedding is over. Anybody still sitting here is just wasting their time. We all saw what happened. We all heard what she said. And he didn't deny it." One of the camera crews zoomed in closer, capturing every word. The whole country was going to see this. There was no hiding anymore. Ngozi looked down at her stomach. She could feel the baby moving. It was small, but steady. She placed her hand on her belly and whispered, "We'll be okay." The guests slowly began to rise from their seats. Some walked out shaking their heads. Others just stared at Chukwudi in silence as they passed. One elderly woman leaned toward him as she walked by and said, "If your late mother saw this, she would cry in shame." He lowered his head. Kayoma turned back to Ngozi and walked toward her slowly. The maids tensed a bit, unsure of what was about to happen. Kayoma stopped right in front of her and spoke in a quiet but strong voice. "Why today?" Ngozi looked up. "I didn't come to cause trouble. I just wanted to work and go home. But then your sister slapped me in front of everybody. You should have told us before now." Ngozi shook her head. Would anyone have listened? Kayoma blinked. She didn't have an answer. Ngozi continued. "I tried to call him. I begged him to take responsibility. He blocked my number. ignored my messages. I came here today just to serve wine. I stayed in the back. I didn't even want to be seen. But when she hit me, her voice dropped. I snapped. Kyoma studied her for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. Well, I guess that makes two of you that have been fooled. She turned and walked away, her shoulders stiff with anger. At that moment, Chukwudi stepped down from the stage and walked toward Ngozi. The crowd turned again. Some people stopped near the exit, waiting to see what he would say. He stood in front of her, looking like a man with nothing left. Ngozi, he said softly, can we talk, in private? She looked up at him, her face blank. Why now? Because I need to explain. You need to explain, she asked, interrupting him. Explain what, Chukwudi? That I meant nothing to you? That everything you told me was a lie? I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did. He knelt down beside her. The whole hall gasped. Chukwudi, the billionaire, the untouchable, was kneeling before a maid. Ngozi, I was scared. That's the truth. I didn't plan for this to happen. I didn't plan to fall for you. I didn't plan to get you pregnant. And when it happened, I panicked. She stared at him. You panicked? So you left me to carry this child alone? To work with swollen feet? To cry in the dark every night, hoping you'd come back? He nodded slowly. I know. I failed you. I failed myself. I failed everyone. The guests who had stayed behind were now whispering even louder. He's kneeling for her. This is more than I expected. Ngozi blinked back tears. It's too late, Chukwudi. I want to do the right thing. She shook her head. You should have done it before today. Not after you got exposed. He was silent. Ngozi stood slowly, holding her belly with one hand and balancing herself with the other. She looked around the room. Most of the tables were empty now. Only a few guests remained. Some were pretending to check their phones, but everyone was still listening. I didn't want this to be my story, she said aloud. But I'm not ashamed anymore. She looked down at her stomach and smiled faintly. This baby is mine, and I'll raise this child with love, with or without you. Chukwudi lowered his head. She took one last look at him and walked past. The crowd parted for her. A few guests stepped aside quietly. A few nodded at her as she passed. Some just stared in silence. Chukwudi remained kneeling. His hands were on his knees, his face filled with regret. One of his close friends came up to him and whispered, Odogwu, get up. You're still a man. But Chukwudi didn't move. Outside the hall, Ngozi stepped into the cool air. The breeze hit her face gently. For the first time in a long while, she felt light. Not because her problems were gone, but because she was no longer hiding. The parking lot was almost empty. Most of the luxury cars had gone. But her world was still here. A small car pulled up. One of the kitchen staff offered to drop her home. She got in, and the maid behind the wheel looked at her with soft eyes. You were strong in there. Ngozi didn't reply. She just leaned back and placed her hand on her belly again. Let's go, she said quietly. As the car pulled out, the grand golden banners that read Chukwudi weds Adana flapped wildly in the wind behind them. But the marriage was over, and the truth had already been born. The gates of the massive wedding venue slowly swung shut as the last guests exited, their footsteps heavy with shock, whispers still thick in the air. What was supposed to be a fairy tale ending had turned into a public disgrace. Inside the hall, Chukwudi was still sitting alone in the front row, staring at nothing. His phone had rung more than 10 times already, but he didn't touch it. Not even once. His close friends had all slipped away quietly, giving excuses like we'll talk later or you need some time. Nobody wanted to be seen standing next to him now. The stage, once glowing with flowers, lights, and cameras, now looked like a crime scene. The bouquet Adana had held earlier was lying on the floor. One of her heels was still beneath the table. Empty chairs and half-drunk glasses of champagne stood all around him, mocking him. He rubbed his face slowly with both hands. Then he whispered to himself, What have I done? A tall man in a black suit walked up to him slowly. It was Mr. Ekin, his longtime personal assistant. Sir, Ekin said carefully, should I cancel the honeymoon arrangements? Chukwudi didn't respond. Ekin cleared his throat. The private jet is already waiting at the hangar. The hotel in Dubai has also called twice. Still, no answer. Ekin stepped back quietly. Chukwudi's mind was far away, replaying Ngozi's voice over and over. I'll raise this child with or without you. He placed both elbows on his knees and leaned forward. His body felt weak. Not physically, but from shame, from regret, from fear. He had built his life on control, on power, on making sure nothing slipped through his fingers. But today, everything did. Suddenly, the hall doors burst open again. Everyone inside turned. It was Adana. She stormed in with her sister Kayoma behind her. Adana had changed out of her wedding gown and now wore a long plain dress. Her face was still covered in makeup, but her eyes were not the same. They were swollen from crying, and her lips were pressed so tight it looked like she was biting them. She walked straight to the front, her heels pounding hard like hammers on the floor. Chukwudi looked up, surprised. Adana, he stood up. Don't touch me, she said sharply, stepping back. He froze. Kayoma stayed a few feet behind her, arms crossed. Adana pointed at him. You ruined me. Please, he said. Just give me a chance to. Chance? She snapped. You had your chance. I was standing beside you in front of the whole world. I was smiling. I was proud. And all that time, you were hiding a pregnant maid in the same building. It wasn't like that. She laughed bitterly. Then how was it? He sighed. I made a mistake. A very big one. But I still love you. No, Chukwudi, she said. You don't love anyone. You love yourself. He stepped forward. Adana, please listen. You embarrassed me. You humiliated my family. My father is on the phone screaming that I must leave you. The blogs are already posting videos. Do you know how many people have tagged me on Instagram just today? I didn't mean for it to go like this. She moved even closer now, her voice shaking. Do you know how I feel? I slapped that girl thinking she was just a stupid maid. But she's the one who was telling the truth. And me? I looked like a clown in front of everyone. I swear I didn't plan to hurt you. You didn't plan, she repeated slowly. But you did it anyway. Over and over. I thought it was over with her, he said. I didn't even know she kept the baby. Adana blinked slowly. You didn't even check on her. That's the part that hurts the most. Chukwudi lowered his eyes. Then she pulled something out of her handbag and tossed it at him. It hit his chest and fell to the floor. It was her wedding ring. I don't want to be your wife, she said coldly. I'm not going to be the woman who closes her eyes and acts like nothing happened. Chukwudi stared at the ring on the ground. The silence between them grew heavy. I'm leaving tonight, Adana said. I've already told the media team to take down all the pictures. If anyone calls me, I'll tell them the wedding didn't hold. He tried to speak, but she shook her head. Don't beg. I'm not doing this because I hate you. I'm doing it because I respect myself. She turned to leave, but paused for one last moment. I hope one day, when you're old and sitting in your big empty house, you'll remember this moment and regret it. And then she walked out. Kayoma gave him one last look before following her sister. Chukwudi stood there, holding the ring now in his hands. It felt cold, heavy, like everything else in his life. At that same moment, inside a small two-bedroom apartment across the city, Ngozi lay on a worn mattress in her tiny room. Her legs were stretched out, and a fan turned slowly above her head. Her back ached, and her ankles were swollen. But her heart? Her heart was calm. Her best friend and neighbor, Kimi, sat beside her, holding a cup of tea. Are you okay? Kimi asked gently. Ngozi nodded. I'm just tired. You were brave, Kimi said. Very brave. I was just tired of hiding, Ngozi whispered. Kimi paused, then said, "Do you regret it?" Ngozi looked at the ceiling. "I regret falling for him, but I don't regret speaking up." "What about the baby?" Ngozi placed a hand on her stomach and smiled weakly. "This baby didn't ask to be born into drama. I'll protect this child with everything I have." Kimi smiled and squeezed her hand. "Do you think he'll come looking for you?" she asked after a long pause. Ngozi shrugged. "Maybe, maybe not. But it doesn't matter. I'm not expecting anything from him again." A knock sounded at the door. Kimi stood up and went to check. She opened the door halfway and peeked out. Then she turned back to Ngozi, eyes wide. "It's him." Ngozi sat up quickly. "Who?" Kimi opened the door fully. Chukwudi stepped into the room slowly. No guards. No car keys in hand. Just him. Dressed simply in a shirt and trousers. Ngozi stared at him. "What are you doing here?" "I had to see you." She looked away. "You've done enough damage." "I know," he said quietly, "but I wanted to face you. Not as a billionaire. Just as a man who messed up." She didn't say anything. He walked closer. "Adana left me. She should have." He nodded slowly. "She deserves better." Ngozi sighed and sat back again. "What do you want from me, Chukwudi?" "I don't want anything. I just came to tell you. I'm sorry. Not just for today. For everything. For leaving. For ignoring your calls. For acting like you didn't exist." Ngozi turned her face to him now. "Do you know how hard it was? Carrying this baby? Alone? Going to the clinic? Pretending everything was okay?" His eyes filled with tears. "I failed you." "Yes," she said. "You did." Silence again. He stepped forward slowly. "I want to be in the baby's life. If you'll let me." She looked at him for a long time. Then said, "You don't get to pick and choose when to be a father." "I know," he whispered. "But I'm ready now. To do everything I didn't do before." "I don't need your money," she said. "This child doesn't need a rich man who comes and goes." "I don't want to come and go. I want to stay." She sighed deeply. "We'll see." That was the most she could say. She had been hurt too much. But part of her wanted her child to know the truth. To grow up with love, not lies. "I'll give you space," Chukwudi said. "But I'll wait. No matter how long it takes." She didn't respond. He turned and walked out. As the door closed behind him, Ngozi closed her eyes. Everything was changing. But she had survived the worst. And from this moment on, she would never be afraid to speak again. The sun was just beginning to rise over Lagos. From the top floor of Chukwudi's mansion, the city lights faded into soft orange glows, and the streets below started to buzz again. But inside the house, everything was quiet. Too quiet. Chukwudi sat alone in his living room. The curtains were closed, the chandelier lights were off. Only a small table lamp beside him was on. His phone was on the coffee table. The screen was filled with missed calls, text messages, news alerts, and videos. He had not touched it since the night before. He leaned back in the chair, both hands over his face. He didn't sleep. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Adana walking out of the hall, her face full of tears. Every time he tried to think straight, he heard Ngozi's voice. "You gave up that right the day you left me." And now the whole world knew. At exactly 8 a.m., his lawyer Mr. Olumide arrived. The man looked tense, carrying a file under his arm and sweating slightly even though the house was cold. "Good morning, Chief," Olumide said, walking in without sitting. Chukwudi nodded slowly. "Morning. I'm sure you know why I'm here." Chukwudi said nothing. Olumide dropped the file on the table and opened it. "You've gone viral. Again. But not for the right reasons. 3 major blogs already have over 5 million views on the video. One of them titled it "Billionaire's Wedding Turns to Baby Mama Drama Live on Camera." Chukwudi looked away. "Adana's father called me this morning," Olumide added. "He says your actions have embarrassed their family name. He wants to sue for emotional damages." Chukwudi sighed. I'll settle him. That's not all, Olumide said. 2 companies you signed endorsement deals with are threatening to pull out. One brand already removed your picture from their website. Chukwudi rubbed his face. They can't do that without notice. They can, Olumide replied. Check the fine print. Any public scandal that damages the brand's reputation gives them the right to cancel contracts. They have legal backing. Chukwudi leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. So everything's crashing at once. Yes, Olumide said bluntly. You played with fire, sir. There was silence for a while. Then Chukwudi asked, what do you think I should do? Olumide closed the file and said carefully, the damage is already done. But what you do next will determine how bad it gets. I went to see Ngozi last night. Olumide looked up. Why? I had to apologize. I had to face her. And did it change anything? Chukwudi shook his head. She listened. But she didn't forgive me. Not yet. Well, Olumide said, you have 2 options. Either lay low and let the storm pass, or do something public to repair your image. Chukwudi sat back again. I'm not interested in repairing anything right now. I just want to fix what I broke with her. Olumide raised an eyebrow. With the maid? She's not just a maid, Chukwudi said softly. She's carrying my child. The lawyer paused, then nodded slowly. All right. Then you need to prepare for a custody case. If she doesn't want you in the child's life, things could get messy. Chukwudi frowned. I don't want to fight her. You may not have a choice. Later that day, Ngozi stood in front of her mirror at home, trying to brush her hair. Her arms were tired, her lower back ached, and her legs were swelling again. But she kept brushing. She wanted to look presentable. Kimi walked in with a steaming bowl of rice. You've barely eaten today. Ngozi smiled weakly. I'm not hungry. You need food, Ngozi. For you and the baby. Ngozi took the bowl and set it beside her. I will eat. Kimi sat on the bed. You know he's not going to leave you alone now, right? I know, Ngozi said. What are you going to do? I don't know. Kimi hesitated, then asked, do you still love him? Ngozi stared at herself in the mirror for a long time. Then she said, that's the wrong question. Then what's the right one? She turned and looked at her. Can I trust him again? Kimi nodded slowly. And can you? Ngozi didn't answer. Meanwhile, news stations were on fire. Every TV channel had some version of the story. Bloggers were doing live sessions. Twitter was filled with angry comments. Some people blamed Chukwudi. Some blamed Ngozi. Some even blamed Adana for not noticing the signs. But the loudest voice came from a viral video uploaded by an event guest named Mrs. Adebayo. She had been sitting close to the stage and had recorded everything on her phone. In the video, you could hear her breathing as Ngozi said the words, "This baby I'm carrying belongs to your husband." People reposted it with captions like, "Men will embarrass you publicly and still ask for privacy. Ngozi the fearless. We need more women like this." Chukwudi just threw his whole legacy in the bin for what? One influencer, Toby Talks, made a video saying, "This is not just gossip. This is the problem with rich men thinking they can do anything and get away with it." But see now? His whole life just exploded in one afternoon. The pressure became too much. By 5 p.m., Chukwudi's PR team begged him to make a public statement. He agreed. He sat in his study with a camera in front of him and a team member guiding the script. "No big words," the man said. "Just be real. Talk like you mean it." Chukwudi nodded. The red light on the camera turned on. He took a deep breath and started. "My name is Chukwudi Okoro, and I owe you all an apology." He paused. "Yesterday was supposed to be the best day of my life. I was getting married to a woman I respected deeply. But I also had a secret. A painful one. A shameful one." He cleared his throat. "I hurt 2 women. One publicly, one privately. I lied. I disappeared when I should have taken responsibility. I let my pride and fear guide my actions. He leaned forward. But I'm not here to defend myself. I'm here to say I'm sorry. To Adana. To Ngozi. To everyone who believed in me. I failed you. He ended by saying, I will not be hiding from the consequences of my actions. I will face them. I want to be better. For my unborn child. For my future. He looked into the camera. Thank you. The video was posted at 6 p.m. By 8 p.m., it had over 12 million views. Back at her apartment, Ngozi sat quietly watching the video. Kimi sat beside her again. He said sorry. I heard. Do you believe him? Ngozi didn't speak for a while. Then she said, I believe his sorry. But sorry doesn't change the past. What if he wants to be there for the baby now? Ngozi turned to Kimi. Then he'll have to prove it. Not with words. With actions. Later that night, Chukwudi's driver dropped him at a small hospital on the mainland. He walked in alone, holding a brown envelope. He asked the nurse for Ngozi's file and filled out the rest of her unpaid medical bills. Quietly, without announcing himself. Without cameras. He walked out and got back into the car. The driver asked, Should I take you home, sir? No, Chukwudi said. Drive around for a while. I need to think. And as they moved through the busy Lagos roads, he stared out the window. His silence, this time, was no longer from pride. It was from regret. And a tiny, flickering hope that maybe, just maybe, he could still fix one thing in his broken world. Ngozi lay on her small bed that night with her hands resting gently on her belly. The ceiling fan above creaked softly, pushing the warm air around. Outside, the street was alive with distant car horns and children laughing, but her room felt like a different world. Her eyes were open, but her mind had drifted far. Not to the present, but to the past. The pain wasn't just about the slap. It wasn't even about the shame in the wedding hall. The pain began long before that. It started with a smile. 1 year ago, Chukwudi's mansion. Ngozi had only been working at the house for 2 months. She was one of the new maids brought in through a cleaning agency. At first, she kept her distance. She did her work quietly, washed the floors, cleaned the windows, served drinks when needed. She never looked into anyone's eyes for too long. But Chukwudi noticed her. It started small. He would greet her when she passed. Say things like, "You're doing a good job." Then one day, he called her aside. "What's your name again?" he asked. She looked down. "Ngozi, sir." He smiled. "Ngozi, that's a beautiful name." She didn't respond. "Are you always this quiet?" he asked. "I try not to cause trouble," she said softly. He laughed. "You won't find trouble here." But she did. A week later, he called her to his private office to serve tea. She thought it would be quick. Just pour the tea and leave. But as she turned to go, he said, "Sit. Just for 1 minute." She froze. "Sir." "Sit," he repeated. "You look tired." Ngozi sat slowly at the edge of the chair, holding her hands tightly. He looked at her face for a long time. "You don't talk much, do you?" "No, sir." "I like that. Too many people talk nonsense. But you listen." She stayed quiet. "Do you have someone?" he asked. She looked confused. "Sir." "A boyfriend? Husband?" She shook her head. "No, sir." "Good," he said. "You deserve someone who sees you." She swallowed hard. That was the first time he touched her. Just her hand. Lightly. Then he let go and told her to go. The next few weeks moved fast. He began to give her small gifts, new slippers, money for food, extra breaks during work. Then came the compliments. "You're beautiful, Ngozi. You don't know it, but you are." She told herself not to believe it. But when you've never been told those things before, even lies can feel like love. One night, he told her to wait behind after the other staff had left. He said he needed help with something in the guest room. She obeyed. That night, everything changed. He told her he liked her. That she was different. That she was the only one who made him feel calm. "I'm lonely," he whispered. "You don't understand what it means to be surrounded by people but still feel empty." She wanted to leave, but she didn't. Something held her there. Maybe fear, maybe curiosity, maybe hope. That was the night he kissed her. That was the night she gave him her heart. Back in the present, Ngozi turned on her bed and wiped her eyes. Her chest felt tight. Kimi walked in holding a small bowl of warm water. "I thought you'd be asleep," she said. Ngozi sat up slowly. "I can't sleep." "You've barely eaten." "I'm not hungry." Kimi dipped a cloth into the bowl and began to clean Ngozi's feet gently. "Your legs are swelling again." Ngozi looked down at her friend. "Why do you help me like this?" Kimi smiled. "Because I know what it feels like to be alone." Ngozi touched her belly. "This child is all I have now." "You still have yourself," Kimi said. "And that's not a small thing." 2 days later, Chukwudi showed up again. This time, he came during the day, holding a bag of baby clothes and supplies. Ngozi was sitting outside under a small shade, fanning herself slowly. He walked up and stood in front of her. "Hi." She didn't respond. He held out the bag. "I got these. For the baby." She looked at the bag, then looked away. "You think clothes will fix everything?" "No," he said quickly. "I know they won't. But I'm trying. Please let me try." "You left me," she said quietly. "I begged you not to disappear. I cried myself to sleep for weeks. I lost weight. I fainted once on the road. Do you know that?" He looked pained. "I didn't know." "You didn't care." "I was scared." "Of what?" she asked, her voice rising. "Of being seen with someone like me? Of being judged? Of losing your name?" He didn't answer. "You used me," she said. "And when I became inconvenient, you threw me away." He knelt down again. "I deserve your anger. I deserve all of it. But please, don't shut me out completely." She folded her arms. "I want to be part of this child's life," he said. "I'm not asking to be your husband. I'm not asking you to forgive me today. I just want to be present. To help." She stared at him. "And if I say no? Then I'll wait. I'll keep coming back. I'll show you that I've changed." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "This child will not be born into confusion. If you want to be here, you must be steady. No coming and going. No empty promises." He nodded quickly. "I'll be steady." She took the bag from his hand and stood up. "We'll see." He watched her walk inside. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. That evening, Ngozi sat with Kimi, sorting through the baby clothes. There were onuses, socks, a soft yellow blanket, and even baby wipes. "He's trying," Kimi said. Ngozi picked up a small blue cap. "Trying doesn't erase what he did. But it shows he feels something." Ngozi held the cap to her chest. "Maybe, maybe not. All I know is, I can't let this baby suffer because of our story." Kimi nodded. "You're strong." "I don't feel strong." "But you are." That same night, Chukwudi sat with his family doctor, Dr. Tunde, in his study. "I want a full plan," he said. "Prenatal care, checkups, food, vitamins, everything she needs." Dr. Tunde smiled. "That's good. It shows you're serious." "I'm not doing this to look good," Chukwudi said. "I'm doing it because I failed before." Dr. Tunde closed his file. "Then we start tomorrow." And just like that, something began to shift. It wasn't fast. It wasn't easy. But it was real. Chukwudi would send food every weekend, vegetables, fruits, milk. He never stayed long. Just dropped the things, greeted Ngozi politely, and left. Sometimes she spoke to him. Sometimes she didn't. But she watched. And slowly, she began to believe he meant it. One morning, during a hospital checkup, Ngozi sat beside him in the waiting room. The nurse called her name. She stood. Then she paused and looked back. "Are you coming?" she asked. He stood immediately. She didn't smile. But she didn't stop him either. And for the first time, they walked into the hospital room together. Side by side. Not as lovers. Not as enemies. But as two broken people trying to do something right. 3 weeks had passed since the wedding that never happened. And in those 3 weeks, everyone's life had changed. Ngozi was now in her final trimester. Her belly had grown bigger. The baby kicked more. Her feet swelled faster. But something else had changed too. Her heart wasn't as heavy as before. Each week, Chukwudi showed up. Quiet. Respectful. No demands. No fake sweet words. Just presence. He brought fruits, medicine, baby clothes, and sometimes, he just sat outside the house in silence. She watched him from the window. Sometimes, he sat for hours without saying a word. At first, she thought it was guilt. Then she realized, it was something more. It was regret. And something else. He wasn't trying to win her love back. He was just trying to be there. One cool morning, Ngozi sat under the mango tree outside her compound, holding a baby name book that Kimi had bought her. Kimi sat beside her with a notebook and pen. "You don't have any names yet?" Kimi asked. Ngozi shook her head. "I don't want to pick in a rush." "Boy or girl?" Ngozi smiled. "I don't know yet." "Do you want to know?" Ngozi touched her belly gently. "No. I want it to be a surprise." Kimi nodded. "You know, not every girl would have stood up the way you did. What you did at that wedding, it changed things." Ngozi looked up. "What do you mean?" "People talk about you every day online. They call you brave. Some say you spoke for every girl that's been used and thrown away." Ngozi sighed. "I wasn't trying to speak for anyone. I was just tired. Tired of hiding. Tired of feeling invisible." Kimi reached over and held her hand. "You're not invisible anymore." Just then, a text came into Ngozi's phone. She opened it and read slowly. It was from Chukwudi. "Doctor says appointment is at 2 p.m. today. I'll come by 1 o'clock. If you want me to wait outside, I will. Just let me know." Ngozi stared at the message for a while. Then typed, "You can come in." That afternoon, at the hospital, Chukwudi sat beside Ngozi in the waiting area. He didn't speak much. He just held the scan folder in his hand while she rested her head back against the chair. "Are you tired?" he asked gently. She nodded. He looked at her belly. "The baby's moving a lot." Ngozi gave a small smile. "Very." He hesitated. Then said, "I read somewhere that if you play music, the baby can hear it." Ngozi turned her head toward him. "You've been reading pregnancy articles." He shrugged, trying to understand, trying not to mess this up. She looked away. "You already messed it up." "I know," he said quietly. "I'm just hoping I can still fix something." Before she could respond, the nurse called them in. They stood and walked into the small room together. The doctor smiled at them. "Glad to see you both again." Ngozi lay back on the bed while the doctor applied gel on her stomach and started the scan. Within seconds, the screen lit up with movement. Chukwudi stared at it, frozen. "That's the baby," he whispered. "Yes," the doctor smiled. Ngozi turned to look at Chukwudi. His eyes were wide. His mouth was slightly open. "It's moving," he said. "It's really moving." The doctor nodded. Strong heartbeat too. A tiny sound came from the monitor. Thump, thump, thump. Fast and steady. Ngozi blinked hard to stop herself from crying. Chukwudi's hand reached out and gently touched her fingers. She didn't pull away. Meanwhile, far across town, Adana sat in a quiet cafe by the window, staring into a cup of untouched tea. She wore a plain black gown and sunglasses. Her sister Kayoma sat opposite her. "You're quiet," Kayoma said. Adana didn't speak. "I thought you said you were done with crying." "I am," Adana whispered. "Then talk to me." Adana removed her glasses. Her eyes looked tired. She hadn't posted on social media since the wedding. Her fans had flooded her inbox with questions. Some rude, some kind, some just curious. But she ignored them all. "I saw his video," Adana said. Kyoma frowned. "Which one?" "The apology video." Kyoma scoffed. "He's just trying to clean up his mess." Adana looked out the window. Maybe, but it felt real. "You're not falling for it, are you?" "No," Adana said quickly. "But I'm thinking about Ngozi." "What about her?" She stood there, in front of everybody, and still spoke. Kyoma folded her arms. "She only spoke because you slapped her." Adana looked down. "I did slap her. I didn't even know her. I just assumed she was trying to destroy my day." Kyoma leaned forward. "She was sleeping with your fiancé." Adana shook her head. "But she was also used. Just like me. He lied to her too." Kyoma sighed. "So now what? You want to go and hug her?" Adana didn't answer, but the thought stayed in her mind. A few days later, Ngozi got a knock on her door. Kimi opened it, and nearly dropped the plate in her hand. "Wait, what?" Adana stood at the door, wearing a long gown, no makeup, and her hair tied back. "I need to see Ngozi," she said softly. Kimi turned slowly and looked into the room. Ngozi had heard everything. She stood up slowly. Her hands went to her belly instinctively. "Let her in," she said. Adana stepped inside, looking around. She saw the simple chairs, the tiny kitchen in the corner, the curtain that served as a door for the bedroom. Then she looked at Ngozi. They stood in silence. Then Adana said, "I'm not here to fight." "I know," Ngozi said. "I wanted to look you in the eye and tell you, I'm sorry." Ngozi blinked. "Why?" "For slapping you, for shaming you, for assuming you were the enemy." Ngozi lowered her eyes. "I wasn't innocent either." "No," Adana said, "but I've had weeks to think. And now I understand something. We were both fooled, just in different ways." Ngozi swallowed. "I thought I was special." "I did too," Adana said. The room went quiet again. Adana reached into her bag and brought out an envelope. She placed it on the table. "That's not hush money," she said quickly. "It's just a small gift. Baby supplies. Diapers. Clothes. Nothing fancy." Ngozi looked at the envelope but didn't touch it. Adana smiled faintly. "You don't have to take it." Ngozi whispered, "Thank you." Adana turned to leave, but paused at the door. She looked back and said, "He may never be perfect. But if he shows up for the baby, let him." Ngozi nodded. Adana left quietly, and Ngozi sat down slowly on the chair, one hand on her chest. Something in her felt lighter. That evening, when Chukwudi arrived with boiled plantains and a small portable fan, Ngozi opened the door for him. He walked in, greeted Kimi, and set the things down. Then he turned to leave. But Ngozi said, "Wait." He turned. "I saw Adana today." His face changed. "She came to say sorry," Ngozi added. He blinked. "She did." Ngozi nodded. "She also said something else. She said if you ever show up for the baby, I should let you." Chukwudi looked surprised. "And what do you say?" Ngozi looked at him for a long time, then said softly, "You've been showing up." He took a deep breath. She added, "I'm still scared. But maybe I can let you try." He stepped closer. "Thank you." "I didn't say I trust you yet," she warned. "I'll earn it," he said. She turned back toward the kitchen and said, "The plantain is for me. But the fan, we can share." He smiled. And for the first time in a long time, there was laughter in the room. Not forced. Not fake. Just soft. Just real. The rain came heavy that morning. Thick drops tapped hard on the roof of Ngozi's small apartment. The sky outside gray and loud. But inside the house, everything was quiet. Ngozi stood in front of the small mirror in her room, slowly tying her scarf. Her baby bump pressed gently against her long dress. Her face looked tired, but calm. There was peace in her eyes, but also something else, something firm, like a decision had been made. Kimi walked into the room, holding an umbrella and 2 files. "I printed the forms," she said, handing them over. Ngozi took the forms and looked at them for a while. Kimi asked, "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" Ngozi nodded. "Yes. Even after everything." Ngozi turned and sat on the edge of the bed. "I need to do this, Kimi. For myself. For the baby." Kimi sighed. "All right. I'm with you." They shared a quiet look. Then Kimi smiled. "Let's go." The car ride to the courthouse was quiet. Ngozi held the folder tightly in her lap. Rain splashed against the windows. Traffic moved slowly, but her heart was steady. By the time they arrived, her legs were slightly swollen, and her lower back ached from the sitting. Still, she got down from the car without help. They walked into the building, past guards and lawyers in black robes, until they found the small office on the 3rd floor. Kimi helped her sit. A young female clerk looked up from her desk. "Good morning. How can I help you?" Ngozi placed the file gently on the table. "I need to register an affidavit." "For what purpose?" Ngozi paused, then said, "For the promise he made. I need it written down." The woman blinked. "Do you have a lawyer?" Ngozi shook her head. "But I have proof." She opened her folder and brought out a stack of printed text messages. Dozens of them, from Chukwudi. Messages where he promised to take care of the child. Messages where he admitted to the affair. Messages where he begged to be part of the baby's life. Kimi added, "We just want something official. She's not asking for money. She just wants to protect the child." The woman nodded slowly. "All right. I'll guide you through it." By noon, they had filed the affidavit. Ngozi signed it with shaky hands, then looked up at Kimi and smiled. "It's done." Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Chukwudi sat in a meeting room with his company board members. They were discussing the brand's image, trying to fix the damage done from the wedding scandal. But Chukwudi was only half listening. He had one eye on the door, hoping Ngozi would call. Hoping she would say something. Anything. A board member said, "Sir, your apology helped. But people still see you differently now. You might need to take a break." "I don't care about the public right now," Chukwudi said calmly. The room fell silent. "I just want to be there for my child." The board member looked confused. "So, what do we do about the press?" Chukwudi stood. "Let them talk." Then he picked up his car keys and left the room. He showed up at Ngozi's house in the evening. He knocked once. Twice. Ngozi opened the door slowly, surprised to see him soaked in the rain. "I thought you'd be busy," she said. "I was. But I couldn't stop thinking." She let him in. Kimi greeted him, then gave an excuse to leave them alone. Chukwudi stood quietly, not sure where to begin. "Ngozi, Saturday you came at the right time." He raised an eyebrow. "Why?" She brought out the affidavit and placed it in front of him. "What's this?" he asked. "Read it." He sat slowly and read every line. Then he looked up, confused. "You documented everything." "Yes," Ngozi said. "I want this child to grow up and never question who was there and who wasn't." Chukwudi blinked. "You didn't have to." "I did," she said, cutting him off gently. "This is not for me. This is for the child. So that even if you change your mind one day and disappear, this paper will remind them that you promised to stay." He looked down at the document again. "You don't trust me yet." She didn't speak. He nodded slowly. "That's okay. I understand." He brought out a pen from his pocket and signed it. Then he looked up at her. "I'll earn your trust. No matter how long it takes." She gave a small nod. A week later, Ngozi was invited to a women's conference. One of the organizers had seen the wedding video and was deeply moved by her story. They wanted her to speak, to share how she stood up for herself in public, even when she had no one on her side. Ngozi was scared. "I've never spoken to a crowd before," she told Kimi. Kimi smiled. Just tell your story, like you told me. On the day of the event, the hall was full. Over 300 women sat in chairs, eyes fixed on the small stage. Ngozi walked up slowly. Her long gown brushed the floor. She held the microphone with both hands. At first, she trembled. Then she took a deep breath and spoke. I was just a maid. That's what people called me. That's how they saw me. A girl who cleaned floors and served drinks. Nothing more. The room was silent. But I made a mistake. I fell for someone who was never supposed to notice me. And when everything came crashing down, I was alone. She paused. But in that moment, when I was slapped and shamed in front of a crowd, I found something I didn't know I had. She looked around the room. I found my voice. The room erupted in claps. Tears filled many eyes. And somewhere in the middle of the crowd sat Adana. In a simple dress, head down, hands clenched. She wiped her tears quickly, then stood and walked out quietly. That same evening, Ngozi returned home to find a white envelope at her door. She picked it up and opened it. Inside was a single page. She read it slowly. I hope you find happiness. You deserve it. Adana. Ngozi closed the door and held the note close. 3 weeks later, Ngozi went into labor. It was a Sunday evening. She screamed out in pain, holding onto the doorframe. Kimi rushed her to the hospital. Chukwudi was already on his way. It was long. It was painful. It was loud. But when the nurse finally held up the baby and said, "It's a girl," Ngozi cried harder than she ever had in her life. Chukwudi came in moments later, sweating and shaking. He stood by the bedside, looking at the tiny child wrapped in a pink blanket. "She's beautiful," he whispered. Ngozi smiled, weak and teary. "She has your nose." Chukwudi bent down and kissed Ngozi's forehead. "Thank you." She nodded. "We did this. Together." 1 week later, there was a small naming ceremony. No press. No noise. Just close friends. Kimi carried the baby while Ngozi stood beside Chukwudi. They named her Chizaram. It meant God answered me. As the guests ate and laughed, Chukwudi turned to Ngozi and said, "I know we can't change the past. But maybe we can write a better story now." Ngozi looked at her daughter, then back at him. "Let's take it one day at a time." He smiled. "That's all I ask." And in that tiny compound, under a bright morning sun, with no crowd, no money rain, no cameras, just love, the real kind, a new family began.